Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new and improved Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. That app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being, for all a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your take on all of them. The text and the phone line are the same for your convenience. 719-247-1313. Yesterday, I talked about whether CU had found their running game. Micah Welch looked really good against CSU, and the question of could they carry it through to the Baylor game. It was a real football conversation. Those are all too rare with this football program. And yes, some of it can absolutely be manufactured by, I'll say, my side of the aisle. But the guy in charge of this program also has to take responsibility, because when he says things like he said at his weekly press conference, you can't help but react. And you can't help but wonder, how does this help win football games? Deion Sanders showing early on in this clip how his heart is in the right place, why he's doing this, coaching is coming from a good place, and then because I think he just can't help himself, it devolves into something else. Take a listen.
When I say I genuinely love these kids, I genuinely really do. It's not about what they can do for me on the football field. It's about what I can help them with in life. Landscape has changed in football. Once upon a time, you guys never attacked college players. Now they're making more money than y'all. And some of y'all are envious and jealous about that. So you're on the attack. It was hands off a college player because he's an amateur. Remember that, guys? Now it's hands on. Go at them any kind of way you want. They're making more money than me, and I'm mad about it.
He doesn't get it. No, check that. He does get it. He does get it. He sounds like he doesn't get it, but he gets it. He's willfully acting like he doesn't understand the dynamics at play here. He is correct. And I've noticed this too. There is a change in the way that college athletics are covered, that college athletes are talked about. It does feel like the idea that you can't criticize a college athlete has kind of gone away. And NIL has everything to do with that. But where Deion Sanders willfully loses the plot is when he says that it's out of jealousy. He's got to stop talking to the trolls in the dark recesses of Twitter and start talking about the more mainstream conversation about his football team. Yes, you want to go down a rabbit hole on X one night, you could see some wild things get said. Wild in the worst way possible. Some terrible things are said. But he's addressing a group of credentialed media. People, many of them who went to school to cover a team. Some of them that graduated at the top of their class, some of them who have been veterans of the industry for years. And the idea that any criticism that goes towards his football team is out of jealousy is complete and utter nonsense, and he knows it. Deion Sanders is smarter than he comes off in these kind of clips. I would say, I don't know how many people were in there, but maybe one of them has a personal vendetta for one reason or another against somebody on his football team. Maybe one. It's not because his players are making money and the media is jealous. That's such a irresponsible thing to say. To paint with the broad brush that way. The reason why there have been more instances where players get criticized is because essentially what NIL has turned them from amateurs to professionals. That was the dam that was holding back the criticism towards individual players. And I suppose that's the one thing that the NCAA's antiquated notion of amateurism was actually good for, is that it did protect these athletes. But once they fought for, rightly, to get compensated for what they do, that made them a professional. They're not the highest level of professional, but they're professionals. They're getting paid to play football. And essentially what they want to do is be treated like adults. That's what's underneath this all. Because before, they're amateurs and they're kids. Oh, you can't give this money to them. They're kids. Well, these kids, quote unquote, decided, no, we're adults. Young adults, but adults. And if we're providing something of value, and that entity that we are providing that value to is raking in a ton of money, we should get some of that. And I am 100% behind them. I don't love the system that is in place, but I put the blame solely on the NCAA for trying to hold back on this for so long. And when the levee broke, then you see what happens. I'm in favor of everything at the heart of it, what they're fighting for, what they've fought for. I just don't love the way it manifests itself. But I get the argument and I agree with it. But if you want to be treated like adults and you want to be treated like professional athletes, that is all encompassing. You can't go to the buffet and pick and choose what aspects of professionalism that apply to you and which ones don't. Now, I will say for myself, and I will say for other people in sports media, that it is more restrained than, let's say, a Broncos player, because there are levels to this. And I do understand Deion Sanders' sensitivity to it. And he was talking about this after the CSU game as well, that these young men have never experienced this before, so they're sensitive. And we understand that. And I think most regular members of the media, not a faceless troll with 18 numbers in his Twitter handle, that person doesn't apply to this conversation, because you know what? You're never going to get through to them. They don't abide by the same rules. But Deion Sanders is saying this, is accusing the people in that room. Many of them, not for nothing, are incredibly favorable in their coverage towards his football team, right? Wasn't that kind of the thing that happened right before the season started? That the most critical of all the media members that covers the Buffaloes is now no longer allowed to pose questions to Deion Sanders? Well, I hate every bit of this, and I know that he knows better. But he does it to serve a purpose. He does it to rally the troops. That's what all of this is about. He knows that he'll never get through to a troll on social media, and he knows dang well that most of the people he was speaking to in that room have not said one thing that could be even misconstrued as being a personal attack on any of his players. It is fair game to criticize the play of athletes who are being compensated. You notice we've moved. It's been a sliding scale. Before it was college athletes and high school athletes. Now guess what? It's high school athletes. Because they're not doing it for the reason that many of Deion Sanders' players are doing it. There's also not that much money being thrown around in high school athletics. They're not making billions of hundreds of millions of dollars off of their athletes. They're providing an opportunity for these young athletes to participate in sports. Once those NIL floodgates opened, I don't want to say it became open season because that would back up what Deion Sanders is saying. It's not that people in the media just decided, oh, awesome, Shedeur Sanders gets paid so I can ruthlessly attack him. Regular members of the media don't do that. Okay, but if Shedeur Sanders makes a bonehead play in the end zone against Nebraska, that is, you can criticize that. Shedeur Sanders criticized himself for that throw against Nebraska. That was the pick six. But Deion Sanders does all of this stuff in order to rally the troops. The members of the media who will never even say one minor critical thing about this program. And he wants them to go on the attack. Deion Sanders actually wants to do the attacking. Isn't that the irony in all of this? That Deion Sanders is actually attacking people while complaining that the media is attacking his players. He's rallying his trolls against those trolls, his media against the other media, his fans against non-Colorado or Coach Prime fans. This is all the Sean Keeler thing. All of this stuff is about that. It's a playbook that has been used in politics for years now. And it's further infiltrated the sports world. But no one has ramped it up as much as Deion Sanders. He knows dang well that the vast, vast majority of the people in that room have never taken a personal shot at any of his players. Have they been critical? Yes, they're allowed to be. That's the world that Shedeur and Travis and all of these other players asked to participate in. It comes with the territory. It can get ugly at times, and I'm not advocating the ugliness. But what I am saying is if they want to be treated like adults and professional athletes, this is what comes with that territory. And he knows it. He knows 90% of the criticism towards his football team is fair, or at least is not personal. He may not think any of it is fair, but it's not personal. He knows that. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Deion Sanders' comments and whether you think that it's okay to criticize collegiate athletes now in the era of NIL. Just getting going on this Wednesday edition of the show. Coming up next, a few former Denver Broncos have been nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, including the late Demaryius Thomas. We'll talk about it next. Trans-Siberian Orchestra returns to Colorado Springs with its winter tour, The Lost Christmas Eve, for 2 spectacular shows on November 17th at the Broadmoor World Arena. So if you want to get your tickets, it's only natural that the best place to go to get those is BroadmoorWorldArena.com. A whole slew of potential Hall of Famers were announced today. I believe it's something like, no, it's got to be more than 80. I'm looking at them. 10 QBs, 31 running backs, 21 receivers. It's a lot. But eventually this list will be whittled down to 20. And then the conversation will really heat up in terms of who deserves to be enshrined into Canton. Now, there are several former Denver Broncos that are on this list, but the one that is the most notable is Demaryius Thomas. As the late Demaryius Thomas is now eligible to be posthumously inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think Demaryius Thomas, and it's not because of what happened to him. I think Demaryius Thomas already held a very special place in Broncos history and in the hearts and minds of Broncos fans, and those players. There is a mechanism to honor them, and that is called the Ring of Fame when it comes to the Denver Broncos. I think Demaryius Thomas absolutely would deserve that honor. I don't think he has the credentials necessary to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, especially when you just look at this list. And you could even do it Bronco versus Bronco, right? Who would you put in the Hall of Fame? Who would you more likely put in the Hall of Fame, I should say, because the answer could be neither, and that happens to be my answer. But who would you more likely induct in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Demaryius Thomas or Rod Smith? So I don't know if at this point Demaryius Thomas is the most deserving Denver Bronco. But certainly this is a great opportunity for people when these Hall of Fame lists come out to kind of remember the career of a certain player. And I think a lot of Broncos fans are doing that today with Demaryius Thomas now being a first-year eligible player. The most notable of the first-year players is, of course, Eli Manning. And here we go. Here we go with the Eli Manning conversation. Eli Manning is going to be a Hall of Famer. He is getting in on this ballot. He will be the most notable player that will be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame next. He absolutely will be. He is top 10 all-time in yards. He is top 10 all-time in touchdowns. And he has won 2 Super Bowls. And those 2 Super Bowls have come against arguably the greatest team ever assembled. I am generally, and I've talked about this. I've evolved a little bit. I used to be very small Hall of Fame guy. Now I've grown to bigger Hall of Fame guy, but I find myself every now and again being a little, having a higher bar. And I feel like if we place a higher barrier of entry to any position in any sport, shouldn't it be football? Shouldn't it be quarterback? Shouldn't we have the absolute highest of standards? Because there are other players like Terrell Suggs, who has the most career sacks of anyone not in the Hall of Fame currently. Fred Taylor was a semifinalist last year. He is, of course, on the list again this year and should be a semifinalist again. He is there's Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore who rank higher than him on the career list, but aren't quite eligible yet to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But of those who are eligible at this point, Fred Taylor has the most rushing yards. And those people are going to get a lot of love for the Hall of Fame because they will look at the list like that and they will say, boom, you go to Pro Football Reference, they put a cross next to, or a plus sign, whatever it is, next to every player in the Hall of Fame on an all-time list. And they're going to go down and they're going to be like, wait, Fred Taylor has the most rushing yards of anyone not with a plus by their name. Terrell Suggs has the most sacks of anybody who doesn't have a plus by their name, isn't a Hall of Famer. And then they're going to look and they're going to see that other running backs that weren't as prolific as Fred Taylor or other players who weren't prolific in sacks the way Terrell Suggs was and says, well, Terrell Suggs is better than that guy. And everyone does their own thing. But I feel like with quarterback, for what Eli Manning is, I understand the stats. I understand the Super Bowls. I get it. And I concede that he is absolutely going to be a Hall of Famer. Maybe this is where I brought this up a while back. I believe it's the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame or maybe Korean Baseball Hall of Fame. They have like an inner circle, almost a gold circle. They call it something like that, where if you meet certain thresholds, you get in there. And it's a way to separate the regular Hall of Famers, as weird as that is to say, because if you're a Hall of Famer, you're exceptional. But like the most exceptional of a large group of exceptional athletes. And I feel like I see every Hall of Fame class go in, even though I'm a bigger Hall of Fame guy. And I look and I'm like, this is dragging down the mean a little bit. And I feel like for what Eli Manning was perceived to be, and I think that perception is based in a lot of reality, he's going to drag down the mean of Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Okay, even though he's 10th all time in both passing yards and passing touchdowns, Phillip Rivers was more prolific than he was. And then, yes, the argument for Eli over Phillip is because Eli won those 2 Super Bowls. But for what Eli Manning was for most of his career, not those 2 shining moments, what he was for most of his career was not a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. But he played long enough, he racked up enough yardage, enough touchdowns, and he had those 2 Super Bowls. That's going to put him over the top. But this is one of those times where I'm like, Montana, Elway, Peyton Manning, soon to be Tom Brady, Eli. Right? You're going to line up these quarterbacks and you're going to say, one of these is not like the others. Eli Manning, even with 2 Super Bowl rings, even top 10 all time in those two categories is still, you can't look at him like you look at his brother, or like you look at John Elway or Joe Montana, or even if you want to go back even further than that. This is one of those times. It's hard for me to deny his Hall of Fame case, but this is certainly one of those times that I wish there was like some exalted level of Hall of Famer that could be placed above Eli Manning. And I don't have anything against the guy. It sounds personal, but it's not. I had an Eli Manning jersey, but kind of the bit was because Eli was the lesser of the Mannings, and Eli was kind of trashed on a lot of his career. It was kind of a goof why I had Eli Manning's jersey. And I was young and irresponsible with money, so a purchase like an Eli Manning jersey made perfect sense to me. He's going to get in. And I'm at peace with that. But he's just not in that group. Out of that draft class, I'll take Ben Roethlisberger. Right? They got the same number of Super Bowls. Ben Roethlisberger was a better quarterback, much better quarterback than Eli Manning. Now, Ben Roethlisberger is going to get in too. I'm just saying, out of that draft class, Ben Roethlisberger to me easily is a Hall of Famer and much better than Eli Manning. I'm looking at this list, and this is the group. I tried to weed through it. I had a list of 20, but ultimately, when it comes down to the 5 to 8 players, there are a couple that I say have to get in. Eli Manning is not one of them. Antonio Gates and Adam Vinatieri. They are my musts. Everybody else, I feel one way. I had the list I put together was Rodney Harrison, who was a semifinalist last year, Luke Kuechly, who is in his first year of eligibility, Adam Vinatieri, Reggie Wayne. I do have Fred Taylor in there. I put Eli just because I know he's going to get in. Antonio Gates and Jared Allen. That was my list. But the ones that I will not budge on that must get in this year are Antonio Gates and Adam Vinatieri. Because they were truly exceptional among their peers. Right? It was Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates. They were the elite of the elite. Antonio Gates was phenomenal. And he really, I know it was Gonzalez before him, but Broncos brought in Julius Thomas years ago, and there was this move to get all these basketball players. Yes, Tony Gonzalez was that at Cal, but a lot of people pointed to Antonio Gates as being the prototype, as being the mold. I want to get somebody like Antonio Gates. Tony Gonzalez is arguably the greatest tight end of all time, and I think he's better than Antonio Gates. But when you talk about impacting the way we look at a position, I think Antonio Gates is very much a part of that conversation. So he gets in, and then Vinatieri. As far as any chance for the Broncos to be represented, and this is one of my musts as well, but it's for the other category, this has to be Mike Shanahan's year. Enough is enough. Mike Shanahan must get into the Hall of Fame this year. Shanahan, Vinatieri, Gates, and then we'll fill in the rest. But those three have to get in this year. But Eli will be the headliner. Make no mistake about it. And we'll see how people feel when he's the headliner in Canton. 719-247-1313. Other Broncos players on the list, Aqib Talib is in his first year of eligibility. Tom Nalen obviously remains. Mark Schlereth. A lot of players with Broncos ties. And I guess Schlereth is Washington will claim him a little bit, but a lot of players with Broncos ties on this list, but I don't know that any of the players are Hall of Famers, but their former coach, absolutely. Coming up next, something happened last night that is very significant in the history of Colorado sports, but you may not have known it. And that speaks volumes. If you're looking for something to do this weekend, may I suggest the Pueblo Chili and Frijoles Festival. It's the 30th year of that event. It's going on this weekend in historic downtown Pueblo, featuring live entertainment, street vendors, cooking competitions, and, of course, chilies. Lots of them. In fact, on my read here, it says chilies, chilies, chilies. Plan your visit and see that all that is in store this weekend at PuebloChiliFestival.com. So something happened last night that if I wasn't in the line of work I am in, and if I wasn't on social media as much as I was, I probably would have completely missed it. Last night, Bud Black became the all-time winningest manager in the history of the Colorado Rockies. Here's what he had to say about it.
When it's over for all of us, right? It's moments like that you remember, right? I mean, listen, no doubt, a World Series, I remember big games, playoff games, or first. But, that's the type of stuff that stays with you.
And, of course, the players celebrated, doused him in, I don't know if it was champagne or they hit him with the shaving cream or what it was, but he looked like the players mobbed him. And good for Bud Black, because he's about the best dude that you're ever going to find. He's a good baseball man. But I can't help but think what is being celebrated is Bud Black's patience level. Bud Black became the all-time winningest manager in Colorado Rockies history in large part because he stuck around. And there's something to be said for that. Right? Showing up, doing your job despite whatever else may be going on, you showed up and you did it to the best of your ability. I am really not trying to take away credit from Bud Black. But I am simply pointing out that what Bud Black was rewarded for last night is his unbelievable level of patience. Because 2 managers ago, Jim Tracy walked in to the front office of the Colorado Rockies and said, I got to be done. You have to move on. They didn't want to. They're going to keep Jim Tracy around. And he had to quit. So this is not a credit to the Rockies front office. They're on autopilot. I'm surprised they were even aware of the milestone. To show up year after year, game after game, night after night, knowing that you are never going to be given what you need in order to compete, and you're competing in a division with the most spoiled, rotten, rich franchise that we have in sports right now in the LA Dodgers. And then you have the Giants, and then you have the Padres. And even though Arizona is not the big spender that those other teams are, they at least have the intellectual capital at their disposal to be a good team. To be the Rockies manager has got to be mind-numbingly frustrating. And yet Bud Black stuck through it because he loved baseball and he loves his players. And he does deserve credit for it. Really, what this is a referendum on more than anything else is just how irrelevant this franchise has become, that even approaching a major milestone, very few people knew anything about it. because everything that franchise does not register with the common sports fan. That's not on you. That's on them. It's a shame because something like this should be celebrated and there should be conversations about how great of a manager Bud Black is. Right? We did it with Jared Bednar. We did it with Michael Malone. We've discussed where they rank, but partly because this franchise has had so very little success and because they are so far removed from anyone caring. Don't really have that kind of, discourse going on. It's a shame because he should be celebrated for it. Even more so, considering how difficult it must be to go into work every day, knowing the circumstances you are about to walk into. And this is not me being optimistic whatsoever. I'm just saying this might be a good opportunity to, if you're going to change something, Bud Black can walk away as the all-time winningest manager in Rockies history. And they can go in a different direction, kind of hit the reset button. Again, not that I expect them to build on that, but actually, you know what? Bud Black, stay on for as long as you want. It doesn't matter. Just stick around. But good for him. Legitimately good for him because he's a good guy. And it takes an unbelievable level of patience to manage that baseball team. There is no job harder. And I don't want to even hear Sean Payton's job being harder. No one's job in Colorado sports. Deion Sanders didn't have as difficult of a job as the Rockies manager has. Maybe Deion's job was just as hard. But at least he knew he could control his destiny a little bit, right? With Bud Black, it's futile. Just who I got. All right, let's go out there. Cross our fingers. So Bud Black becoming the all-time winningest manager in Colorado history, also longest tenured. Brett echoing those same sentiments. Bud Black is a good guy. I've heard him on Jim Rome several times. He's a quality man and a good baseball mind. Great dude. Great dude. Deserves so much better than that dog bleep organization that he works for. I'll tell you that. Ryan says, stop talking about the Rockies. We don't care. Hashtag fire Momfort. Hashtag that's my point. Text here talking about Eli Manning becoming eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame and it being a fait accompli that not only will he get in this year, but he will be the most notable, most talked about. And maybe not all for the right reasons, but Eli Manning will headline this upcoming class of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't love it. Tommy asks, from that draft class, how do you feel about Phillip Rivers? I said that Ben Roethlisberger is the best out of the three of them. He's the most deserving of getting into the Hall of Fame. I think Phillip Rivers is a more talented quarterback than Eli Manning. He is a better quarterback than Eli Manning. He has numbers to back up that he was a better quarterback than Eli Manning. But it's going to be by basically what the standard that I'm holding Eli to. I really can't sit here and say that Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer and Eli Manning's not. I really can't. Phillip Rivers is like the Marty Schottenheimer of coaches. Like the numbers say so, but you got to put so many other people ahead of them. And it's like maybe one, and I've said this about Marty Schottenheimer, maybe one day he gets in, but he was also at it as a coach much longer than any of these quarterbacks. It's kind of an apples to oranges conversation, but there's some parallels here. And if you lived here for any amount of time, you know as well as I do that Phillip Rivers was a part of chargering. He was an active participant in that. When we talk about all these heartbreaking games that the Chargers lost, how close they got only to come up short, like mistakes by Phillip Rivers were as big of a reason for that as anything during those days. He was better than Eli, but I think Roethlisberger's the guy out of that draft class. He's the guy that I have no problem with being in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely should be. No doubt about it. Eli, I'm merely conceding that he's getting in, and I can't put Phillip Rivers above Eli in terms of Hall of Fame candidacy. But he's better. But more talent, better doesn't always translate to more deserving of the Hall of Fame. 719-247. 1313. Coming up next, we'll get into Bo Nix related business and also the significant happening that is going on right now across the National Football League that absolutely applies to Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. Drive Time Sports continues after this. Welcome in Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you. You can watch the show live on a daily basis on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, you know, the whole nine. At XTRA Sports 1300. There is something quite interesting going on right now with the discourse in the National Football League. Of course, this will kind of fade into the background a bit because week 3 begins tomorrow night with the Jets and the Patriots. But the Bryce Young conversation, I think, is the culmination of a few years of discussion on who is to blame for the failure of young quarterbacks. And it really is quite fitting that it takes such a drastic example that after 18 games, Bryce Young has been benched for people to really get in lockstep and be like, not just that, hey, the Carolina Panthers are an absolute mess and screwed this guy up. And they've done it before. But franchises must bear responsibility in these quarterbacks that we end up labeling as busts. One of those players that was on his way to becoming a bust just so happens to be playing against the Denver Broncos on Sunday. Now, Baker Mayfield certainly fared better in Cleveland than Bryce Young did in Carolina. But to be the number 1 overall pick, it certainly wasn't trending in a direction for Baker Mayfield that he was going to look like he was worth that, especially in the draft that he went, considering the Buffalo quarterback. Baker Mayfield today was asked about the benching of Bryce Young by a franchise that many people thought he was done because he played for.
Quarterback's hard, especially for young guys, when you're not surrounded with the pieces that you're not given the opportunity to have success. And so that's a lot of the time guys have the talent, they might have the brains, but they don't have the right opportunity, the right fit. I mean, I'm sitting here right now in a way better fit than the other places I've been. And that's not to put other teams down, but it's a matter of the pieces around you, the coaches. And for Bryce, a guy that, I can relate to this, finding that belief within yourself again, and he'll get it. His story is far, far from finished.
And that's why many people are pushing Bryce Young to the Rams because of what happened with Baker Mayfield. He was replaced in Cleveland by Deshaun Watson because the Browns felt like they would never get to where they want to go with Baker Mayfield. And I will argue that they were right, because this Baker Mayfield that the Broncos are about to go against on Sunday was not in Cleveland. He wasn't. Now, the Browns could not have picked a worse player to replace him for a variety of reasons, but the thought process within the Browns organization that they weren't going to get to where they wanted to go with Baker Mayfield, I think was right. It's just, you got to find somebody else. You can't acquire Deshaun Watson, but I'm not going to go back into all that stuff. They're reaping what they sow in that regard currently. But then he goes to Carolina, quarterback needy team. Why are they quarterback needy team? It's not a good team. And he fails there. flat out fails. And then he lands in LA. And he puts on an absolute show against the Denver Broncos, gets Nathaniel Hackett fired, gets his career second life, and now Baker Mayfield is in the discussion for the MVP after 2 weeks. So Baker understands what it's like for a franchise to give up on him. But that's the other part of the story, too, here. Yes, franchises deserve far more blame than they have gotten in years past for these players failing. But in Baker Mayfield's case, and this is a credit to him, he didn't lose that belief in himself. The Browns might have made the right decision in some part, right? Because of what they had seen from Baker Mayfield. Again, don't go get Deshaun Watson, but I get that you were looking at Baker Mayfield in Cleveland and going, we're going to need more. And certainly there was nothing in Carolina that would make you think that Baker Mayfield would become this. And I think going through that, all of that, actually helped Baker become who he is. And he's in, as he pointed out, a phenomenal spot. He's got Mike Evans on one side. He's got Chris Godwin on the other. He's in one of the better positions for any quarterback in the league with the weapons that he has. So that's the other part of this here. It's not to say that the player themselves deserves no blame or bears no responsibility, but it has to start with the environment they are in. And it starts with belief. Right? And with Bryce Young, there was some question on whether the guy who is tasked with developing him, Frank Reich, was even on board with drafting Bryce Young in the first place. And as it pertains to Bo Nix, that's why I pointed out a couple of weeks ago what Greg Penner said to him. Because that's important, that the owner of the team is saying, look, not just, hey, I believe in you. David Tepper probably told Bryce Young he believes in him. But Greg Penner specifically told Bo Nix, we understand that you're going to have your struggles. We're in this for the long haul because we believe in you. So I don't foresee Bo Nix going the way of Bryce Young in terms of the Broncos giving up on him. What I do wonder is if Bo Nix has no success this year, whether he'll go the way of Bryce Young in terms of being an incredibly losing all his confidence. That's how Bo Nix can end up like Bryce Young. But everything that the Broncos have said and done is that they would not make the kind of decision as quickly as Carolina did with Bryce Young. And it is on, as we talk through the week about how to get the Broncos right, and I did the three-pronged approach thing yesterday. Bo Nix's improvement, what he needs to do is last on that list. It has to get done, but it starts with Sean Payton. It starts with this roster. That's the bigger issue through 2 weeks for the Denver Broncos. What Bo Nix is doing is understandable. Frustrating? Sure. Understandable. But you wonder, with this collection of players and this scheme, whether it can work for Bo Nix. And that's why you're hearing a lot of conversation, and you will hear it shortly here from Sean Payton about what they're going to do. Because right now we are, and there may come a day where it is squarely on the shoulders of Bo Nix. I think we ended up there with Drew Lock, right? With the immaturity, with the, getting suspended for not wearing his mask and trying to manipulate the NFL and trying to fool them. And just like, there came a point where it's like, all right, Drew Lock's not that guy. And we could get there with Bo Nix. But 2 games in is hardly the time to look at Bo Nix and be like, no. Let's see if this Broncos team can help him out at all. Sean Payton was asked today about the idea of, because this was his whole obsession with Zach Wilson, right? Feels like another place failed him, saw the talent, and wanted to bring him in. Here's Sean Payton on failed first-round quarterbacks that found their way eventually.
When I was first coordinating at the Giants, we had Kerry Collins, who was a first-round pick and had kind of reborn, or if you will, found new life in his career. And so history shows that it can happen. I mean, it happened with Breeze, actually.
Actually, it didn't. I have to object to that last part. Drew Brees, it was an injury. Like, I get what he's saying. Highly touted, highly drafted, not super high, but he was, first, and Sean Payton was talking about first, second rounders. But it was an injury that made people be out on Drew Brees. He doesn't apply to this conversation. Zach Wilson does, if he were ever to capture any success moving forward. But Drew Brees, that's not Drew Brees. And it's so fitting that he would say that, because I think he does believe that he saved Drew Brees. There's a guy that's now a regular on College Game Day that also thought that Drew Brees had something left. It wasn't about talent with Drew Brees. It wasn't about him being a bust. It was about the injury he sustained and whether he would be the same after that. Yes, there is some risk in bringing in Drew Brees like the Saints did. And there is credit to be given to Sean Payton. And I know that's what he's after. So here I am giving credit, because I think he took Drew Brees and helped him become one of the most prolific passers of all time. I don't know that I had that on my Drew Brees bingo card when he was taken in the same draft as Michael Vick. So yeah, Sean Payton deserves credit for Drew Brees, but it's not the same as Bryce Young. It's not the same as Baker Mayfield. It's not the same as Zach Wilson. It's a different conversation. So I have to object to that part of it. But Kerry Collins is a good example. When Giants went to a Super Bowl with Kerry Collins. But 2 things out of this. One, in terms of Bryce Young, that's why I say he's got to go somewhere else. You notice Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Drew Brees, even if you want to throw Drew Brees in there, Kerry Collins, they did not reclaim their career, resurrect their career, with the same team. And that's the way I feel with Bryce Young. Put him in Miami, put him in LA, send him to Vegas. Some landing spots are better than the others. Some are ideal landing spots. Others are just teams that could take a chance on somebody like Bryce Young. But I don't think there's a path forward. Even if Bryce Young shows back up this season and replaces Andy Dalton, I still don't think there's a long-term future for Bryce Young. I could get on board with the idea that Bryce Young's career is not over, but I feel like for all intents and purposes, his career in Carolina is over. And he needs the change of scenery. I feel like if you're going to be a former first-round quarterback that resurrects his career somewhere, it can't be the same place. There are far fewer examples of that than guys who went somewhere else. I think that might be an integral step here if Bryce Young is going to rehabilitate his career. Go somewhere else. It's not going to happen in Carolina. It's not going to happen in Carolina because, you know, I don't think they believe in it, but Carolina has gotten nothing out of Darnold, nothing out of Baker, nothing out of Bryce Young, and two of those guys are now two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. So it's a Carolina thing, but I also think it's the team that benches you. And it's why I thought that Justin Fields would not be able to somehow coexist with Caleb Williams. Okay, once a franchise says, you're not our guy, and they're going to do something as drastic as benching you a year, 2 years into your career, that's it. Drew Lock, same way. Once Teddy Bridgewater was chosen over Drew Lock, that was a wrap for Drew Lock in Denver. He had to get out. And I feel the same way with Bryce Young. The second part of this is, even though Bryce Young is a drastic example, it's why I just feel like for the foreseeable future, the heat, the criticism, the attention must be on what Sean Payton can do to help Bo Nix and whether this Broncos roster is even good enough for Bo Nix to succeed. Those two things are first before we get to, Bo Nix has got to do this, that. I know he does, but not before these other steps are taken. And that's part of this psychology that we've had over the years, is that we've always looked to these quarterbacks to immediately produce. And we put it on them when they don't. There are other factors. So, not that I'm thrilled for Bryce Young, but some good is coming out of this because we're having this conversation. And everybody is on Bryce. It's like nobody's on Carolina's side. And why would they be? That franchise is a mess. 719-247-1313. Speaking of the Broncos rookie, if you're worried about him not having a sense of humor after the first two games, I can assure you that he does, and I will provide you audio evidence of that. And then into the more important things, like what is Sean Payton going to do on Sunday to help out his rookie quarterback? Drive Time Sports. Got to give a shout out because today, not just this studio, but all of our radio studios, all 6 of them, and our hallways and our offices, my office. Little carpet cleaning got done today. Shout out to Don and his team at Zero Res. Feels like a brand new studio. It's cozy. And if you know anything about me, I just drop stuff onto the floor. Like the carpet in here was just ridiculous. The number of spills. But they, in all seriousness, they did a great job. So thanks, Don and the team at Zero Res. Coming up on Sunday, the Broncos will play the Fighting Baker Mayfields. But, of course, the quarterback that you're more interested in is on the Broncos side of it. And if you were worried that all of this would what's going on, all of this talk and rhetoric that's going on would take away Bo Nix's sense of humor. That, of course, was one of the main reasons Sean Payton drafted him. He still has it. He was asked about what he's learned about playing quarterback in the red zone.
Well, ironically, in the NFL, I obviously haven't figured out a whole lot because we haven't scored in the red zone yet. But I think it's, like anything else, that's a work in progress, and we got to continue to find ways to, move the ball and gain just subtle yards to where we can put the ball close enough, get in some goal line situations, and put the ball in the box.
He's not wrong. In work in progress, I think that should be printed on a orange T-shirt somewhere. That's what the Broncos are right now. They are a work in progress. As far as progress goes, has Sean Payton seen any through the last 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, it's hard to measure any growth. So it's hard to answer that question. Obviously, you want to win, and you want to put yourself in a position to win. And so I think that's a work in progress right now.
See? Work in progress. Like, I feel like if there's one thing that you want to point to that at least shows that coach and quarterback are in sync, what else do I need to show you? They're using the same description and they are in lockstep. But now it's time for the coach to help out his young quarterback. Now things are going to get a little complicated, especially if you are hoping that the Broncos can run the football better, because Mike McGlinchey is now officially on IR. So meet Alex Palczewski. Here's Sean Payton.
Palcho's one of those guys that he's been competing, and I think, we'll be smart relative to what we're doing protection-wise, but he's played in a lot of football games, and look, I know we'll be excited about his first start.
Translation, we're going to give him some help. We're maybe going to go away from him a little bit. And you would expect them to do that. This is an undrafted guy has not played a ton in the NFL. It's obvious. That would be the smart thing, is to not put too much on. You certainly can't give him the responsibilities that Mike McGlinchey has. But as the offensive line has come under some fire over the last couple of weeks, it certainly doesn't help that Mike McGlinchey is going to be out for the next 4 weeks. So giving Palczewski some help, maybe running plays away from him, you might see that quite a bit on Sunday. But where Mike McGlinchey is best is actually where this offensive line is best, and that's what makes the start to the season so curious. I mean, all these guys are better run blockers. Garrett Bowles, better run blocker. Quinn Meinert's better run blocker. Mike McGlinchey, better run blocker. In fact, most linemen are better at road grading than they are standing up and keeping a pass rusher from getting to the quarterback. But Mike McGlinchey's your best when it comes to run blocking, or at least has been over the course of his career. So that doesn't help things, for sure. But there are other things that can improve on Sunday for the Denver Broncos. And there's been some discussion about simplification, right? You saw the video. You probably watched it in live time like I did. Bo Nix trying to spit out the entire game, the play call, and players are like correcting him or like asking him questions. They have to burn a timeout. And that leads a lot of people to say, simplify it. Gotta be simple. Keep it simple. I don't know that the play calls being too long is really the issue here. And I get you could still be complicated even though you're passing it short, but I feel like watching the Denver Broncos, I don't look at their offense and say it's too complicated for Bo Nix. I don't feel that way. Like simplification, and Bo Nix had a great point about this on Sunday. Like, these NFL teams are smart. You can't, like, my son's in junior high football and their play calls are like 4 words long. Like, you can't be that simple. So I don't know that that's it's not good that Bo Nix is having some trouble spitting out the play call. And Lord help me if we get another conversation about wristbands. I've had enough of that over the last few years. I don't know that that's the big thing. I think it's a little bit of predictability. No matter how complicated the play calls are, it sure seems like the Seahawks and the Steelers are sniffing these plays out pretty well. And there can be a counter to that. And Sean Payton touched on it earlier this afternoon.
Reducing the variables can help. And I just, it's something that I think you have to look at as a coach. You have to start, all right, what can we do better? And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit. How do we reduce the variables? And then who's doing it? Those 2 things I would point to.
And this is going to sound like semantics. Reducing variables, simplification, they sound like synonyms. And in some ways they are. But it's not really the length of the play call, but just asking Bo Nix to see less, I guess, is the way that I would put it. Having to think a little bit less. And what Sean Payne was referring to there was the change of personnel groups constantly. Bo Nix has got to worry about, okay, who's in the game now? Who's supposed to be there? I guess it is very much about simplifying. I just keep looking at a lot of people reacting to the video. It's too complicated for him. It's like, it's not the play call that's the issue here. It's what they're asking him to decipher. And a way that you can simplify it or remove variables for Bo Nix, however you want to put it, is pre-snap motion. You're going to see a team on Sunday in the Bucs that does so much pre-snap movement. Bo Nix doesn't have to think about that. It's just it's eye candy. Right? You send a guy in motion, and now that causes at least one player on the defense to think about, okay, am I going to follow that guy? What's that guy doing? He's moving. And for Bo Nix, it doesn't change anything about what he's doing. But maybe it distracts a little bit. Maybe some pre-snap motion, I feel like should be in the offing for Sunday. Make the defense think about more while Bo Nix thinks about less. And doing what is successful. The empty, the 5 wides. Go back to Oregon. That's where you fell in love with him, was watching him at Oregon. That's what they do. They spread it out. They sling it all over the yard. Try to do some of that. But then there's the overarching theme here of the Broncos maybe not having the requisite talent. And that's what Sean Payton, I think, kind of hinted at the end there. Not that he thinks they're devoid of talent. He certainly has a higher regard for this roster than I do. But he's asking these big, tall receivers like Cortland Sutton to run 5 to 7 yard crossing routes. And he's not good at getting separation. He's not good at yards after the catch. And that's exactly the position you're putting him in. Now, a lot of that I would equate to talent. Sean Payton's talking about it like, okay, if I have this big, tall receiver that's really good at getting jump balls, maybe I should stop sending him 5 yards down the field and asking him to run across the formation. Just Cortland Sutton, go to the end zone. I think it's going to look different. I'm not going to say better necessarily. We'll have to see about that. But I think it will look different on Sunday than it has the past couple of weeks. In terms of the play calls, in terms of where these receivers are on the field, what they're being asked to do, what Bo Nix is being asked to do. I think Sean Payton feels like it's time. I think there's a bit of a surprise to him because I think he expected Bo Nix to be able to pick all of this up faster than he has, to be better at processing all of this than he has been. But the fact of the matter is he hasn't been. So is that because you're asking him to do things to process too much? Are you asking him to process things he's not good at processing? That's what Sean Payton has had to do all week. And I do think it leads to a different looking Broncos offense. I think that will mean it'll be better. But different doesn't always mean better. Different does mean different. We'll see on Sunday. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Bucks, Broncos, Bo Nix, or what do they call him? Paucho? Coming up next, there are a multitude of NFL teams that have started off 2-0, so we'll do the opposite exercise of what we did yesterday. Yesterday, it was what 0-2 team do you believe in the most? How about the 2-0 team that you believe in the least? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. But before I go to this short break, I want to tell you about the Circa Sports Colorado app. Tampa favored by 6.5. By the way, on the Circa Sports Colorado app. And I was looking at tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, and I noticed that the majority of the games, either side of the line, minus 110. Which tracks because that's what Circus Sports Colorado strives to do. Other sports books much more regularly use minus 115, minus 20. It's a lower hold model. They try to keep as little money as possible on these bets, including large market bets like futures, golf tournaments. All of this is just to provide a better betting experience. That's what they're striving to do. This is their way to do it. And I think it does because I've been using the app and I find it's a better experience than other apps I've used. I've used a lot of them. Circus Sports Colorado is so sure that they've created the best betting experience that they invite you to shop around, compare and contrast, decide for yourself. Download the Circus Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. Gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Here's something that should brighten up your day if it needs brightening up. I don't want to be presumptuous. Tomorrow, Avs start training camp. Ooh, almost hockey season. Excited about that. If you are a fan of Pueblo Chili, frijoles, or festivals, boy, do I have an event for you. It is the Pueblo Chili and Frijoles Festival this weekend in historic downtown Pueblo. It's the 30th year they've been doing this. Live entertainment, street vendors, cooking competitions. And my favorite part, chilies. Plan your visit at PuebloChiliFestival.com. Yesterday, I pointed out the 9-0-2 teams and said the team that if you told me there would be one that would find its way into the playoffs, if there was one team that I could back, it would be the Cincinnati Bengals. I've seen them start slow and bounce back. I think Joe Burrow is ultimately going to have an MVP caliber season. I'm not out on the Baltimore Ravens, but the rules are you pick one. So now let's flip it. Heading into week 3, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Funny how that math works out. 9 2-0 teams. All of their chances of making the playoffs are much better than the group of teams I talked about yesterday, but not all of them are for real. So which one is the least for real? Which one is Fugazi? Let's go through them, shall we? Bills. Nope. Bills are for real. Bills are finally the team that we have asked them to be for years. Run the football. And they are. I think that they have some staying power. Absolutely. Chargers, kind of for the same reason. I think they are to be believed in. There will come a day where Justin Herbert will have to be prolific, that he'll have to win them a game. But for now, it's been J.K. Dobbins and Harbaugh's track record. And you look at the talent this Chargers team has with Jim Harbaugh, it usually happens quickly. And it's happening quickly in L.A. I believe in the Chargers. The Chiefs are the fake team. No, just kidding. I believe in them. I think that the Steelers are going to hang around. I still think there's a decent chance they finish third in that division or fourth. We're still early, but that defense is unbelievable. And as long as Russell Wilson is not healthy and they continue to start Justin Fields, that is going to bode even better for them as the season goes along, because I think he's going to open some things up. And Arthur Smith is going to open some things up. Texans are good. Seahawks are pretty good. That would leave 3 teams: Vikings, Saints, and Bucks. One of the 2-0 teams that I'm not quite buying into yet. One of those 3. I think it's Minnesota. And part of the reason is because of who they have in their division. If there is one of these teams that I think is going to fall off the most as the season wears on, I think it's going to be Minnesota. Now, the easy answer would be New Orleans in this regard. They cannot score that many points every single week. And I don't believe that they can. But a lot of people like the Saints last year. Could they be the team that collectively we were a year early on? They're not going to be this much of an offensive juggernaut all season. There is going to be a bit of regression to the mean, but the division they are in, Alvin Kamara, if he stays healthy, and I don't think, and Derek Carr is, you could do worse than Derek Carr as your quarterback. I think the Saints are going to stick around, and I think the Bucs will. I don't think the Saints or the Bucs are Super Bowl contenders by any stretch of the imagination. But they play in a division that is very winnable. They can both pick on the Panthers, if nothing else. It's more who Minnesota has to deal with in their own division once that gets going. Jordan Love's going to come back. He was out at practice today. Good on the Bucs for beating the Lions, but the Lions are one of the best teams in the NFL. They're going to win a lot of games. I think the correct answer here, if you had to sell one of the 2-0 teams, or say that one of the 2-0 teams that's most likely to fall off, I think it's Minnesota. Sam Darnold's been a great story, and I think he can be capable within Kevin O'Connell's offense, and we know what kind of offense that is. We know what who he has ties to and all of that kind of stuff. But they are just not as good as Detroit and Green Bay, and they have to run against them twice each. And my belief in the Bears is waning by the millisecond, but I do believe that the Bears will be better as the season progresses than they've been through 2 games. That is a brutal division. And I would say Minnesota, but they've all these 9 teams have put themselves in a good position, and there's no reason to think that they're going to completely fall off a cliff in the next couple of weeks. But as the season goes on, if I said the most likely to not make the playoffs, it would be Minnesota. Take your thoughts. Which 2-0 team are you not quite buying into just yet? 719-247-1313. Here's a little did you know? Did you know that you can now use your body's own healing properties to revitalize those achy joints that you've been dealing with? Yes, you can. And you can get real lasting pain relief with advanced regenerative medicine at QC Kinetics. If you're tired of arthritic pain in your knees, hips, back, or shoulder, and why wouldn't you be? I don't know anybody that's like, you know what? I very much enjoy my arthritic joint pain. It is a part of me. You may think it's a part of you, but it's not a welcome part of you. This is something you need to check out. The local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are experts in these amazing treatments. People here and across the country rave about their results. You can enhance your joints, improve mobility, and get back to doing the stuff you love without drugs, without surgery, without pain, and without downtime. Call now. It's a free consultation. At least hear them out. That's all I'm doing. I'm pointing you in their direction. Free consultation. Take action to get lasting joint pain relief with help from QC Kinetics. 719-347-1988. 719-347-1988. QC Kinetics. 719-347-1988. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on this Wednesday. Ryan Kaufman with you. Pleasure to have you, whether you're listening on air, online at extrasports1300.com, or through the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. And once you download the app, you'll notice there are other goodies. Check out the latest Colorado sports news. You can even interact with me. I would say the station, but I mean, we'll do our best to pass along your messages to Dan Patrick, but yeah, you can interact with this show through the app. A lot to do. It's not just about listening, although that's the best part. Download it today, wherever fine apps are given away, because, did I mention, it's free. 719-247-1313 is the number if you would like to give your take on the day's topics, like perhaps these three, which we call What's Driving the Show. All right, story number one, we're just all jelly. Here's Deion Sanders.
When I say I genuinely love these kids, I genuinely really do. It's not about what they can do for me on the football field. It's about what I can help them with in life. Landscape has changed in football. Once upon a time, you guys never attacked college players. Now they're making more money than y'all. And some of y'all are envious and jealous about that. So you're on the attack. It was hands off a college player because he's an amateur. Remember that, guys? Now it's hands on. Go at them any kind of way you want. They're making more money than me, and I'm mad about it.
There is the head coach of the Colorado football program. At least you can say that he tries to protect his players, which is, I guess, that is an admirable stance, right? That's what you want out of your coach. But when he just says absurd things that aren't true, you got to push back against it. Okay. The college athlete made a choice. The athletes on his team made a choice when they decided to participate in the new world of name, image, and likeness. That day came around where they became professional athletes. They are paid. That's what NIL is. It's pay for play. That's what it is. Let's stop trying to make it anything other than that. And soon they will be employees, aka professionals, employed by the university. Professional athletes, professionals in any profession, leave themselves open to criticism. It is part of what you sign up for. They didn't want to be treated as kids, as amateurs. They said, we're young men. We're providing a service. We're providing something that is leading to these universities getting millions and millions of dollars, and we deserve compensation for that. And I 100% agree with that. But there are other things that come with the territory. This is not a buffet where you can step up there and say, I want the money. I want, all the perks. Ooh, I don't want the criticism. Leave that. Nope. Sorry. It comes with the meal. I understand that they are getting attacked because guess what? Even Joe Schmoes get attacked on social media. Everybody gets attacked on social media. Okay? The problem is Deion Sanders is taking something that is more prevalent in the dark recesses of Twitter than it is in the mainstream media. And he's saying this to a group of mainstream media people, television people, newspaper people, radio people, that many of them went to school, got years of training to do the job well and to understand what the difference is between a criticism and a personal attack. And for him to levy that at those people is so incredibly wrong. And it is 100% okay to say that Shedeur Sanders made an awful decision to throw that football in the end zone in Lincoln. It is okay to say that this offensive line isn't very good. It's okay to say, although I would question your opinion, it's okay to say, you know what, that Travis Hunter, he's really not that good. It's an absurd take, but it's okay. And you can criticize. Yes, there is a line, and some people cross it. But Deion Sanders is doing what he always does. He paints with a broad brush. He doesn't necessarily tell the truth, and he does it to rally his people against the rest. You're attacking my players. Why? Because some people said that he should have shook Braden Fowler-Nicolosi's hand? Is that a personal attack? And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, most people are on Shedeur's side. But he does this. It's a playbook straight out of politics for years. The media's the bad guy. It's a faceless entity that is easy to attack. That's the thing. Deion Sanders is the one that's on the attack. I'm so tired of people in the mainstream, not on the fringes of society, being likened to internet trolls. There's room for legitimate criticism. His football team has garnered a fair amount, deservedly so. There is still levels to this. Most people in the media do not criticize the Colorado Buffaloes players like they do the Denver Broncos players. There's levels to this. And real journalists, real media members, not trolls in the dark web, understand the difference. But he and his sons read every comment that is sent to them, and they'll find Hotmail 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and say, oh, that's the media. No, it's not. Not every criticism is a personal attack. Saying somebody is not good at playing football is not a personal attack. But he knows that. That's the thing. He knows. Deion Sanders knows. He's been in the media. He understands. He sat up there and did the same thing for years. He understands that we are in a new world where they are no longer amateurs. They are professional athletes. They're still younger, so most people show some restraint when criticizing them, understanding where they are in their professional football career, but they are professionals and it comes with the territory. Good on Deion Sanders for protecting his guys, for sticking up with his guys. And I understand that this is going to get a few more bucks into the collective. This is going to get a few more of his friendly people in the media and his Buffs fans, and they're going to go after anybody that says anything negative. I understand what all this is about, but when he sits up there and just says things that aren't true, they have to be called out. Let's go to another level of professional football. Here's Sean Payton on adjustments for Sunday?
Reducing the variables can help. And it's something that I think you have to look at as a coach. You have to start, all right, what can we do better? And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit. How do we reduce the variables? And then who's doing it? Those two things I would point to.
Translating. We're not going to ask Bo Nix to process as much as we have been asking him to process. And we're also going to not make players who have never been good at yards after catch or separating in a short field. We're not going to ask them to do that. I think this Broncos offense is going to look pretty different on Sunday. Reducing variables, simplification. There's a lot of different ways to describe what Sean Payton is talking about. But what he's asking Bo Nix to do, he is not capable of doing right now. That's just the reality of the situation. So you have to do things that he is comfortable with. You have to let him see things that he can understand, that he can process. And then come back to the other stuff. This is what good coaches do. They tailor what they do to their personnel. And Sean Payton went into this season with some thoughts, some assumptions about what his personnel was and was not capable of. And I think he made a miscalculation. I think some of these players have let him down in that regard. That's why he keeps going back to personnel. Not calling anyone out by name, but he's saying, like, look, what I thought this offense would be early in the season, it's not working. I don't have the players for it. My quarterback's not at the point yet where he can do this stuff. I got to make adjustments. And that's a good realization that it seems like Sean Payton is at. And the best part is, if it works, nobody will care if it's Sean Payton's offense or it's some other offense that Sean Payton decided to tailor to Bo Nix. The results, if it works, Sean Payton's a genius. If it doesn't work, well, it's a continuation of the discussion of the past couple of weeks. And last but not least, something that happened that should be receiving more fanfare, but I understand why it's not. Here's Rockies manager, Bud Black.
When it's over for all of us, right? It's moments like that you remember, right? I mean, listen, no doubt, a World Series, I remember big games, playoff games, or first. But, that's the type of stuff that stays with you.
Audio courtesy of the Rockies. Last night, Bud Black became the winningest manager in the history of the Colorado Rockies, which, no matter how bad the franchise is, that is usually something. Like the Nuggets were a really bad franchise for a long time, and it was still celebrated when coaches became the winningest or moved up the list. We follow these things. We usually celebrate these things, but it is just another example of how irrelevant this franchise has become that I don't think many people knew. That's what Bud Black did last night, became the all-time winningest manager. And part of the reason why he's the winningest manager, he hasn't said to hell with this as quickly as some of these other guys have. And he deserves some credit for that. Jim Tracy was like, I'm done. You must fire me. Fire me. Bud Black stuck through it because he loves baseball and he's a great baseball man and he loves teaching. Unfortunately, this organization, you want to talk about letting somebody down. This organization And so remember how Bud Black's career in Denver started off? The Rockies made the postseason in his first 2 years. And you thought at that time, and don't lie, you did, with the roster they had at the time, back-to-back postseason appearances, you thought, man, this is going to be maybe the best stretch in the history of the Rockies, and it went south so quickly. That was a wrap. That series loss they had to the Brewers was it. And then everything after that has been absolute garbage. And I don't know, quite frankly, how Bud Black was able to stick through it for as long as he did. But kudos, and he will stand atop. Higher than Don Baylor, Jim Tracy, Clint Hurdle, Walt Weiss, Jim Leland, as the all-time winningest manager in the history of the Colorado Rockies. Great job, Bud Black. Now get out of there while you still can. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show next. Tomorrow night, week 3 in the NFL begins as Aaron Rodgers and the Jets take on the surprising New England Patriots, off to a 1-1 start with Jacoby Brissett. Our coverage from Westwood One begins tomorrow at 5:30, and you can listen to it on the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. Getting to the text line, couple of really good, I really appreciate these texts because they're very well thought out. And I want to read them on air. Let's start with Albert. Said, your statements on college athletes opening up themselves to criticism now due to NIL is absolutely true. But the media has changed also. New media, entertainment media, and other non-traditional outlets are sometimes led by individuals who are not as journalistically trained. Unfortunately, the traditional mechanisms to reach all media, such as a press conference, includes new and old media. When Prime speaks, he is addressing all the media and putting out a message to gain his players' praise. Maybe the true journalists with integrity and professionalism need to figure out how to put more pressure on the knuckleheads that make them look bad. Also, watching the watchers, maybe. Interesting. I agree with you that we have new media, and this is a phrase that Draymond Green loves to use, new media. And I would agree with you that there are members of this new media that are not as trained up, but I would say when it pertains to CU, I would say a lot of those people are honks for Deion Sanders. Now, we could take this into a bigger conversation and talk about it all across the country, and I think you're right. But I also think when I think of the outlets who are new media, they are, because they want the access, because they are not given the access. If you work for the Denver Post or the Colorado Springs Gazette or one of the television stations, those people obviously are more trained up. There's an expectation that they have that access because they are, a popular media organization. They are well regarded, well respected. Some of these other lesser known media companies need to be very friendly in their coverage in order to gain access. So while there are exceptions to every rule, I kind of look at what's going on at CU and I say the outlets that you would label as new media are generally much friendlier to Deion Sanders. But that may not be the case everywhere. And I know that there are exceptions, but I would say in Deion Sanders' case, new media is his friend. It's quote unquote old media, TV stations, right? Radio, newspapers that he has decided to take aim at. And I don't know that those are the people who are making personal attacks. And I don't even know. I would like some more concrete examples of this, because I would like to decry people who are taking personal shots at Shedeur and what that looks like, what Deion Sanders thinks a personal shot is, because the only examples of what he believes are personal shots are ones that were taken at him that led to him not wanting to answer questions from Sean Keeler anymore. That's not new media. And he keeps saying that he's fine, that he's dealt with this. He has no problem with it. It's the kids. And I legitimately wish that there were examples. I don't think he really has them. Or if he had these examples, we would be able to easily identify and say, okay, this is not CBS. This is not the Gazette. This is not. I'm fine that he's protecting his players. I just, it's an easy place to go to. And it's a claim that you can make without backing it up. And a lot of people will just go along with it. And I think that's part of the problem. From the 720, Denver sports media is brutal and of late absolutely childish. The countless rants about wanting Russell Wilson to fall flat on his face and laugh about it or make fun of him is not my idea of a reputable journalist. I'm sorry, my friend. Deion is on the defense for sure, but as a journalist, you dish it out. Better expect to get a bit as well. Many examples of coaches biting back in the NFL. This is where the levels to this go. I think that a lot of the people who you might identify as maybe taking some shots or making fun are entertainers. We have to separate journalists and entertainers, although they are both a part of the bigger media. There are people whose job it is to be critical and entertain, and sometimes that entertainment leads to joking about somebody or poking a little bit of fun. Again, you're bringing up Russell Wilson, who is not a CU player and also at a different level of professional sports. And Deion keeps saying he's good. Well, he's an NFL player, right? Last time he played, he was in the NFL. There are degrees to this. And I'm not saying there aren't times where it can sound personal. But again, Deion Sanders is specifically talking about his football team. And other than trolls on social media, I just haven't seen the examples of where Shador or Travis or any of his players are being personally attacked. But I do agree with your notion that, hey, you gotta dish it out. You gotta take it a little bit. Yeah, I agree with that. And you're right. Some NFL coaches have taken aim. It's a little bit of a different dynamic. And I think that those coaches in the past or players in the past have been able to recall examples to back it up. I'm not saying it's, and I know what it sounds like. It sounds like media guy is getting sensitive about going after the media. And I suppose that I don't blame you for that. And yes, I will admit some of my bias that I will back up people that I know, people that cover that team, that Deion Sanders is saying, you're attacking my players. And I know a lot of the people that go and sit in those rooms and they are not. And yes, as a member of the media, I will stick up for the media. That is my normal position. But I can also acknowledge when I see somebody unnecessarily taking a shot in a personal attack and something that is crossing the line, and recognize that. I'm not saying that everyone in the media is good. That none of them have agendas. That all of them have never taken a shot. But Deion Sanders is also painting with a broad brush and saying media bad, and that's not true either. But this is what he's trying to do. And I've been talking about it for months now. What Deion Sanders does, what it reminds me of, it works. It rallies the troops. It gets support behind you. It turns you into a victim. It curries favor. I've never once taken a personal shot at any one of Colorado's players. In fact, I may say that this team may not be that good, but all of my criticism, I've marveled at Shedeur. I've defended Shedeur against people who have said he's not that good. So the players on CU, I haven't been that critical of, other than to say the collective wasn't good on a particular game, or this particular player missed this play. Most of my criticism goes towards Deion Sanders, and he said that's okay. He said it repeatedly. And I don't think I'm even personally attacking him. Clock management, is that a personal attack, that I don't think he manages the clock well, that I don't think he's that good of a coach, that his X's and O's aren't great? Is that a personal attack? Like, at some point when Deion Sanders keeps levying these claims against the media, he's going to have to provide specifics. Can't just lob grenades in there and walk away time and time again. Now, in Sean Keeler's case, they did. And then we can debate whether those rise to the level of personal attacks. But he continues to say this kind of stuff. And I want to say it's not okay to personally attack or slide into the DMs of one of these players and go after them. But there are platforms where criticism is okay. It's part of it. It's warranted. It's justified. But I know what he's doing, and he's good at it. And I got to give him some level of credit for that, for sure. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the real cost of name, image, and likeness. You know, there's been a lot of conversation about what NIL has cost, the downside of it. In fact, Sports Illustrated put out a list of the 50 most influential athletes or people in sports. Of course, Caitlin Clark was prominently featured, but they also did which sports figures are losing their influence. And college coaches and administrators were on there because of NIL. But I would submit that the people who pay the most for NIL are you and I. 2 cases in point. 1, Tennessee has added or will add a 10% talent fee to their ticket prices to stay competitive in terms of generating money to then give to the football players. It costs about $55,000 a year to attend that institution. That stadium in Knoxville is full of people who are buying tickets, buying beer, buying some sort of beverage, buying hot dogs, buying hamburgers. And yet there's going to be a 10% fee given to those people on top of what they already pay to support the university in their efforts of fielding a competitive football team. But this is not surprising. There have been a lot of different ways for people to fundraise for the collective, and it always ends up being out of the fans' pocket. Oklahoma State's QR code idea, the fans. Right? Tennessee, 10% talent fee. Doesn't already cost enough to go to a Volunteers game. You can't take out of that and pay the players. You have to pass that charge, that money, that cost on to your fans that already are supporting you, that have already given you tons of money, maybe $55,000 a year to send their kids to your institution, and you can't, the cost of higher education in this country is not high enough. You can't find a way to take a few shekels out of that. Merchandise sales, none of that. There's not enough money in that. You haven't made enough money in that. You have to ask Tennessee fans to pay more for their tickets so you can afford the best player. How about this? How about cut out the middleman and just let the Tennessee Volunteers fans run the football team, run the NIL. They are responsible for it. It's their thing. You're just taking their money to give to your collective. Just cut out the middleman. Let the fans who are a part of the collective decide. Do we want this quarterback out of Missouri? Okay, what are we willing to pay him? Would we like Braden Fowler Nicolosi for $600,000? Is he coming with Torrey Horton? Yes. Okay, deal. We approve. It's getting to the point you're going to ask these fans to pay more money to bring in players. You should probably start asking them what players they would like you to bring in. So of all the ideas that these schools have come up with, this is my least favorite. But like everything else, not to make this a bigger thing than just sports, but like everything else, we'll pay. We'll pay. They know we will. maybe there will come a day where sports, both collegiate and pro, will get to the point where they have gone to that well too much. And even the most dedicated fans of the team will be like, you know what? No. Not going to give you more for season tickets. Not going to give you more for this jersey. I know college, we're just kind of starting this, right? So probably take a long time if you're a big time fan of a college team to get there. With pro sports, I feel like we've been going down this road for a while. So there's that. I don't love that. And sorry to you if you're a Tennessee fan. I feel like that school makes enough money that they should be able to do this. And also, aren't they just going to become employees? Aren't we heading that direction? Isn't NIL kind of going away? They're going to regulate how much these guys get paid, yeah? But that's not the most disappointing thing. And that's not the highest costs you and I have paid in the era of NIL. Today, Woj and his bombs were taken from us. As Woj is basically going to his beloved alma mater, St. Bonaventure, to be the GM of the basketball program, which in today's parlance is he's basically going to help with their collective and luring players to St. Bonaventure. And this has gone too far. This is the final straw. Losing Woj, you can up my ticket prices by 10%. You can spam my inbox incessantly asking for money for the collective. You can charge me $20 more for a hoodie. But I will not sit idly by and allow my Woj bombs to be taken away so St. Bonaventure can compete in whatever conference they are in. How dare you, St. Bonaventure? But think about this. A position like this wouldn't have existed just a couple of years ago. And now no more Woj bombs. Because when you think of insiders in this cottage industry of dealing, Adam Schefter was kind of the first one that I remember, right? The guy that was giving inside scoops. And it was on the Broncos. And then it was the NFL. And Al Davis got very upset at him. But Woj is the face of that cottage industry. And Adam Schefter said it today on ESPN, just talked about like the toll it takes. And I think Adam Schefter had a great story on the Dan Patrick Show. I think it was the Dan Patrick Show not too long ago, where he's at like a very important family event and he has to go report on news. Could you imagine, as stressful as it must be, to haggle over money with some 18-year-old shooting guard from Poughkeepsie, New York, as maddening as that might be, that is still preferred over constantly being on the clock. Because they are. The minute, and especially you think of the dynamic between Woj and Shams Charania. A-star of this rivalry, it seems like the NFL guys all kind of coexist. They all say, as reported first by this person or can confirm. And it's like, they're all good. Seems like all the NFL insiders play nice. But Woj and Shams, like they're in this, either it's perceived to be a rivalry or it's an actual rivalry that they're trying to one up each other. They're trying to break news. They don't credit one another. But like the moment that Woj misses out on, not to put this into the universe, but Nikola Jokic demands a trade to Dallas so he could play with Luka. The minute he misses on that for a kid's birthday or a bar mitzvah or a family dinner, he's cooked. He's done. I can't imagine those stakes. And as much as I look at NIL and I say, I would want no part of that, I would say that it might be a little less stressful than the news breaking business. The best local Woj bomb that I remember, you get the Woj bomb and you're like, whoa. It was, and maybe I'm not being a prisoner of the moment, but maybe I'm not thinking back long enough. But when Woj tweeted that the Nuggets were going to get Michael Porter Jr., because there was just this thought that there's no, like it wasn't, I did my show that night at the old Chicago right across the street from the studio. And the conversation was actually going to be kind of a mid evening for the Denver Nuggets, because a lot of the players in that draft, there's like no way. There's no way the Nuggets were going to get any one of these guys. And then I don't remember what I was doing, but I remember opening Twitter, and I think it was because of my expectations for the night that I was like, well, I'm not going to lock into this draft. All the guys that I would like to see on the Nuggets are going to be gone long before. And then the Clippers did their thing, and all of a sudden, Michael Porter ended up with the Denver Nuggets, a talent that certainly Nuggets fans were not expecting to land on that draft night. And that's when he got in trouble with the NBA and he couldn't like directly report that a team was taking somebody. So he came up with all these different ways to say it while still saying the same thing. I think with Michael Porter, it was Nuggets are clearing a path or have a clear pathway. He had that too. Like he was in those draft nights. I didn't really want to look too closely on draft night when I was really locked into these drafts, because I wanted the television show of it all and didn't want the picks to be spoiled. But I will say, in the times where I was like, it's okay, I didn't look through Twitter, he did find a lot of different ways to get around the NBA not wanting him to report on the draft picks, to tip the picks before they happen. So no more Woj. It'll be Shams, and we'll see what ESPN. Make jokes all you want. That is a massive loss for ESPN. Right? One of the few real information people that they have left at ESPN. And I know Shefty's still one of them, but everyone else is an analyst or an entertainer. You know what? I would like to run. I'm just announcing my candidacy. I will leave this job to run the NIL collective for the Air Force Academy. If anybody at the academy is listening and wants to bring me in, thinking there's no way we could land Ryan to do this, you can. I will run the collective for name, image, and likeness at the Air Force Academy. I hope you got the joke. And I hope you download the Circus Sports Colorado app. Because I did a while back, and that when I did, they told me you're going to have a better experience betting on the Circus Sports Colorado app. And I said, how? Explain. And they said, well, take a look at the holds. Take a look at the money lines. Tighter money line splits. Low holds. With these minus 115, minus 120, minus 130, so on and so forth. It's like, it's not as fun. It's costing you more to get in on the bets that you would like to make. But Circa strives to be a minus 110 split. They have the lowest hold on futures and other big markets. And if you are fortunate enough to do quite a bit of winning, just know that they will not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other sports books who do limit winning players. And if you ever have an issue, just know there are real people, the same people that are behind Circa Sportsbook in Vegas are there to help you. No chatbots. A better experience. See? It's almost like it's better for the better. That would be a good tagline for them, wouldn't you say? Download the Circa Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. It's been my distinct honor and pleasure to serve you on this Wednesday. Enjoy your evening. And let's reconvene tomorrow at 3. How's that sound? Going to mix in some Avs, people. How about that? It's tomorrow. Enjoy your night.